Hello everyone, and welcome back to Revit Snippets. Great tips you can learn in just a few minutes. Today's topic is how to build this custom tree family. As you can see, it has a nice 3D form that looks a bit like a blob, perfect for your conceptual view of the building. And if you turn into plan view, it shows a clean representation of a custom tree with different sizes in different directions. If I now turn on the properties window, I can then change its east, west, south and north directions independently from one another. For example, we can change the west radius to maybe 3 meters. And straight away you see it has extended into that direction. This is perfect when you need to model your trees after survey information, because in real life some trees they don't have the same radius in all directions. In addition, this can help your sun study to be more accurate. If I open that view now, solar analysis, you can see my trees from the survey information will be accurately taken into account when we conduct a solar study here. By the way, this channel is all about helping you master Revit as quickly as possible, so if you haven't subscribed, make sure to do that now, so you can get all of our tutorials as soon as they are online. Okay, let's see how we can create this tree family now from scratch. I'm gonna go to File, New Family. And the trick is starting from a custom family template called Generic Model Adaptive. In here, we will want to place the trunk first, and then followed by the tree crown. Let's lay out some reference planes to begin. I'm gonna go to the front view now, and create the first plane. This one will show how high my trunk is, so maybe from here to there. Let's give it 2 meters. And now for the top of our tree crown, maybe somewhere up here. Probably 7 meters above. And now for placing additional profiles to make the tree look good, we need to make 3 more reference planes. So 2 here, and 1 more down below. Okay, I will name this one Trunk Middle. And place some dimensions to make sure it's actually in between these 2 dimensions. Next step, we can draw the profile for our trunk. Let's go to the reference level view and draw in here a quick circle, maybe of radius of 150. And now we need to split this circle into 2 halves. Let's do split line and make sure each half is equal, just like this. We're doing this because if you extrude the circle without splitting it, the form may get twisted, and that's not very nice. I can now select them both and turn them into reference line. Let's go to the front view again, and now we can name this reference plane Trunk Top. Back to 3D now. I can now select my reference arcs, copy them, paste them to the same place, and change the copy's reference plane to Trunk Middle. Repeat those steps. I can now also copy them to Trunk Top. Here we go. Now I can select those middle ones and change their radius to something smaller. So tap select one of them. I can now get this to be 100. And that changes the other one as well. We can now select all 3 and click on Create Form. Nice. Let's save the family under Good Tree. And now we're ready to create the crown of our tree. It will be similar to the trunk, but instead of using 3 different profiles, we can use 4 for better control over the crown shape. Also, instead of having 2 arcs per profile, we need to have 4. Because remember, we want this tree to be able to flex its dimensions independently in 4 different directions. Let's go here and name this reference plane Crown Middle 1. And the one just above it should be Crown Middle 2. And the last one, you guessed it, this will be Crown Top. I can now start drawing the profiles. Let's first set the work plane to be Ground Middle 1. And now the key is to draw the profile using elliptical arcs. Not these regular arcs there, but this one over here. If I start drawing now, I won't see anything because the view range is not high enough to see ground middle 1 plane. Let's select first this reference level view, go to view range, and move the cut planes up to 10 meters. Okay. Oh, we have to move this one up as well, just above the cut plane. I can now set the active plane to be ground middle 1 and start drawing the first quadrant of the profile for the ground. To begin, just draw a full ellipse like this, and then we can split it to get only the first quadrant. Delete the rest, and I'm left with this. Check the endpoints now to get the quadrant only. And under properties, I can now turn on the center mark, just like this. Now you see it there. We can now align this center mark to where the two reference planes intersect. So first alignment like this, and second alignment like so. We can now create two dimensions to control the extent of these arcs in this directions and the other direction. So first dimension from here to this endpoint of the arcs, and the other one from this plane to the other endpoint. I can now call this one middle radius 1, and the other one will be middle radius 2. Let's make sure they are instance parameter as well. So change this to instance, and same for radius 2. Now watch if I go back to there and try to change one of those values. Maybe that can now be a bit less. You can see the arcs updated nicely. Let's do the same now for the other 3 quadrants. I can now select these arcs and just mirror it to the other side. To make it easier, I can now select the mirrored arcs and also the 2 reference planes. Do isolate element now. And now it's time to put in those 2 dimensions, but this time for these new arcs. We can now reset the view to see everything again. Now by looking at this, I can see this dimension here should be the same as middle radius 2. But if you try to give it the same constraints to that same parameter, the sketch will be over constrained, so just leave it, that's fine. For the other one, however, we can now make that into middle radius 3. And it should be an instance parameter as well. Next step, you guessed it, we can now mirror that last arcs down to get the 3rd quadrant. Like so. And like before, I can now select a new quadrant along with the plane and isolate them. I can now make those dimensions again. Reset the view again. And now I can say this should be the new distance. It should be middle radius 4. Should be instant as well. Next step, one last mirror. Over to this side. And just like before, I can try to put in 2 dimensions. And you don't need to turn any of those to constraints because they are already constrained into one of those other dimensions already. Anyway, now everything's ready for us to test. If I go to family types now, we can now change some of those parameters to new values and see how they react. If I want to increase radius 1 to maybe 2 meters, you can see it extending nicely onto that side. The same for radius 2, maybe a bit less. Looking good. Radius 3, how about 3 meters? Nice. And the last one there, how about 1.5? Here we go. As you can see now, our constraints are all working. We can now copy this, paste to the same place, and then change the host to be ground middle 2. Go to 3D now, and then you have our middle profiles for the ground. Now we need the last profile up here on the top ground plane, and it shouldn't have to be this complex form. We can just copy those 2 arcs there to the same place, and then move those copy to the top ground plane. Before making the form, however, let me try to flex our radius again for the middle profiles. If I make this into 5 meters, you can see the copies, they don't have the same constraints as with the original elliptical arcs. That means you have to set up those again. So let me get those arcs, go back to level view now, and isolate those 2 reference planes along with them. It's time now for us to put in the 4 dimensions we need. So the first one is there, second one here, third one there, and the last one here. We can now reset the view and maybe make those dimensions easier to see. That's a bit too much. 1 to 50. Here we go. I can see now this should be middle radius 2. This one middle radius 3. The next one should be middle radius 4. And the last one here will be middle radius 1. And now if I go to 3D again, try to change those dimensions, I will see them update in the same way. Looking good. Next step, we can now select those arcs and turn them into reference lines. Just like that. Now we're ready to create the form of our tree crown. So let's select all the profiles at once. 1, 2, 3, and 4 profiles. Click on Create Form now, and that's your crown. It looks like something a bit weird, not really a tree crown. So let's change some dimensions to make it look more realistic. Let's go back to the front view now. And the first thing to do is to move some of the planes down, just so the taper point of the top and the bottom of the crown is not so sharp. You can just drag them like this. And as you can see, it's getting much better already, even in 3D. We can now make sure this element reports itself correctly in the project as a tree. So let's go to Family Categories and change this from Generic Model to Planting. And it should be always vertical because it's a tree, obviously. Click OK to confirm. And how about we test it out in the project? We can just place it somewhere out here. And let's see it in 3D. It's that one. Looking great, just like its brothers. Anyway, the color is a bit off. I don't want it to be gray like this. So let's go back to the family now. And before I change the color, actually I will try and make this smaller in radius. So we can just isolate those lines, get one of them, and change that to be maybe 10. Just so I don't see a flat surface on the top of my tree. You see, now that's barely noticeable. Let's now select this ground and give it a material parameter. Call this ground. And we can do the same for the trunk as well. This will be obviously trunk. Next step is to create some parameters so we can control the tree height in the project. We can now go to the front view and just make the first parameter here for the trunk height. It should be instant, so we can be flexible without making new types every time we change this value. Now for the tree crown, the position of those 2 reference planes here in the middle is important in determining its shape. You can see if I try and drag this one up or down, I will get trees of different shapes and styles. It's up to you to say the distance from here to there should be either the same as the distance between those 2 middle planes or different. For now, for simplicity, I'll try to make those tree distances the same. So let's do equal, just so my tree is a bit nice and curvy like this without any abrupt transition. We can now create another dimension to control the overall height of our ground. How about ground height as an instance parameter? If I try to change one of those, I should see the result straight away. So trunk height, how about 1500? But I can raise it back up by increasing the ground height to 5 meters. We can now load this into the project. And apparently it looks much better already. We can now assign the proper materials to make it look more like a tree. Tree crown number 2, let's use this. And for the trunk, I can try this one instead. Those two materials, I made them before for those other trees here. Let's see how they look like. If you want to know how to make those materials from scratch, check out other videos on this topic on our channel. For now, let's test our parameters. You can now feel free to change the tree and the trunk height. Make it much bigger like this. And to make it less like a leaf and more like a tree, you can also change the radius as well in each of the directions. Just like that. And I think you get the idea. After this, just place them a few times on your topography. Try to vary the sizes of each tree, and you will get a much better and naturally looking scenes like this. There's one last thing. If I see this new tree in plan view, you can see it's not showing the simple representation like with the previous family. To do this, we need to change it slightly as well. Let's edit the family again. Select the tree crown, and here we need to give it a new subcategory. Just go to Manage, Object Styles, and choose to make a new subcategory called Ground under the planting group. And while we're here, we can also make trunk also under planting. I can now put this blob into ground and then classify this trunk to be of the same category trunk. Load this back into the project now. And now if I go to VV, under subcategories for planting, I can see those two are now unticked, that's why I don't see the tree anymore. That's what happens to the other tree family. It has the 3D objects unticked and become visible. What you see here is actually a detail item embedded into the family itself. To do so for our new tree family, you need to create a new detail item component. And to save us some time, I have made it already, as you can see here. It follows the same concept. You need to have 4 elliptical arcs with dimensions to control their extensions in both directions. In addition, you can have in here a circle to denote the cut section of the trunk. Once you've done this, just load it into the 3D tree family. Let's try it now. I will load it into Good Tree. And just place it here in the reference level view at the center of the family placement point. This detail item component, it has also parameters to control the extents in 4 directions. If I go now to here, you can see all 4 of them along with the trunk radius. I can do now a link between those parameters to those already in this family, namely middle radius 1, 2, 3, and 4. So I can now link radius west into radius 1, link radius east to radius 3, radius south to radius 4, and radius north to radius 2. And because they share the same dimensions now, you can see the little item is now closely following the shape of our tree. I can now load this back into my project. And that gives you the 2D symbol for that tree in plan view. It's still following the same set of radiuses, so if I now change one of those, you can see the 3D objects and the 2D detail component will both update. Alright, if you like more tutorials like this one every single day, make sure to subscribe to this channel. For now, practice creating this tree family, and I'll see you in the next lesson.